Let this be the intro to the shop update. I'm showing you this saw blade because this is what I am going to use to cut the frame rails on the haul truck. There's somebody came in there and I told them what I was going to do and they thought I was nuts. Now I just picked this up, but let me explain something to you. Back when I was working, sometimes we would have big, like 8-inch or 10-inch Schedule 40 pipe, and we'd have to cut it. Now, there's pipe cutters, 4-wheel pipe cutters, but it's a bitch. You got to get the pipe up in a tripod, and then running them 4-wheel cutters around that pipe it's time-consuming. What the guy came up with was a little circular saw that had one of these blades on. Now, I'm going to say it wasn't like a 7 1/4 inch blade. It was like a 4-inch blade or a 3-inch blade on this thing. But I got to tell you, it was battery operated. That little saw just plowed right through that pipe. Now, what we would do is just take a wraparound, mark the pipe, and then follow the mark on the pipe with the saw. But I got to tell you, it was probably 5-10 times faster than trying to cut it with 4-wheel cutters. It just blew through it. So I've had experience with these blades, and that's what I'm going to try and use. I've had a couple of thoughts. I was going to use a cutting torch, and I really don't want to put too much heat, any more heat than I need to. Understand it's going to be welded, but I don't want to put any more heat than I have to into those frame rails. Especially just to cut it. So I'm gonna opt for this and I'll let you know how it turns out. But I'm gonna be covering a couple of different things in this shop update. I replaced the coating on the blast cabinet window, and let me start there. Okay, I'm over here to the blast cabinet, and what I just did is replace the coating on the inside of the glass window. As you can see, or hopefully you can see if that light isn't blowing you out, it's pretty visible. But what happens is over time, this is a plexiglass or maybe a Lexan coated window, and on the inside there's a Mylar film that prevents the plexiglass or Lexan from becoming pitted by the ricocheting medium that you're blasting in there. And that's what happens, is it bounces off and hits the window. So what they did is put a Mylar film on the inside of it. So every once in a while I'll have to replace that Mylar film so that you can see back in there. It was to the point right now where I couldn't even see in the cabinet while I was blasting. Let me just interject this little clip here. Probably nobody gives a shit about me having to replace this Mylar thing in the blast cabinet. That's not the reason why I'm doing it. The reason why I'm doing it is because I have never ran into a blast cabinet that had a film like that, or I've never personally seen one that had a film like that on it, and it's a great idea. Saves you from having to replace a plexiglass, or if you happen to have one that has tempered glass in it, keeps you from replacing that glass, and all you have to do is buy sheets of Mylar to protect it. So that's kind of the only reason why I'm filming this. I had never seen it before I bought this blast cabinet, and I think it was a great idea. It's very inexpensive to replace it. Very inexpensive over having to replace plexiglass or glass. And as you know, it gets worse as the dust is created in there. I have a vacuum system on it, but it was so bad, the window was so bad. One of the things that I had trouble with, well, I didn't have trouble with it, but probably some people would have trouble with it, is finding Mylar. I was familiar with Mylar because we used it in drafting when we were making blueprints or prints of construction drawings. So I was familiar with it, and I actually went to a drafting a blueprint place and picked up the Mylar, but I'm not really sure if somebody didn't have a place like that around. I'm assuming you probably could buy it online, but if somebody didn't have a drafting place around, I'm not even sure where you would get Mylar. But anyways, I just kind of wanted to update you on that. I've got one of those pieces of frame rail in there, and I'm going to be blasting that. That's why this all came about. This is that Ford Triton engine. I'm just showing it to you because the next thing that I'm going to do for the shop update is I made a couple of hauls during this period since the last shop update. One was down to Kentucky and one was to New Jersey. The Kentucky run, I took a generator set down there, and these hauls, every time I make a haul, it turns out to be something different. You know, there's always something odd going on, a cool place or cool people that I meet. But let me explain the Kentucky haul first, and then I'll bring you back and dive into the New Jersey haul. Okay, I'm on my way down to Kentucky. I'm just south of Cleveland, heading towards Columbus. When I picked up this load, this generator, genset, I strapped it down, and then the guy says to me, well, I want a tarp it. And I says, well, you didn't tell me that. And I didn't bring a tarp with me. And he says, well, I've got a tarp. And so he pulls his tarp out, and I says, it's never going to work. It's never going to last. It's going to shred. And he says, no, it'll be good. So to begin with, it was like one of those tarps. Tractor Supply, like tarp. The vinyl type tarp, but it's only got like eyelets every 4 feet, and the whole thing was just a fiasco. I told him right from the start it's not gonna last. So anyways, I got probably about 80 miles before it shredded, and I lost half of it. I didn't even bother to stop. I actually didn't even, well, I kind of knew that it was going to go, and I didn't actually see it go. I stopped and left the half on, and then I got probably about 150 miles just before Cleveland, and the only thing that was left of it was just shredded. The only thing that was left of it was the front half over, kind of like the radiators of the generator. And I knew it wasn't it wasn't gonna last. That piece was gonna blow off, and I didn't want to blow it off and blowing back on some trucker, you know what I mean? So I pulled over again and took that piece off and stuffed it in my toolbox of the trailer. But luckily, it lasted until we got out of the snow. And that's kind of why you might have saw it in the, when I first started videoing this, the moon. Moon's up there. So it's starlight, generator's not covered, but it's not bad weather either. That doesn't mean we're not going to run into some bad weather before we get down into Kentucky, but at least it lasted through the snow. Got about 398 miles to go from here. So anyways, I get the genset to this place in Kentucky, which apparently I found out was like only about 30 miles from Brian's shop, but he wouldn't have been there anyways. But this place, I'm not going to say they made, but they service pump jacks. Nah, not these jacks. Pump jacks for like oil wells. I didn't even know that they had oil wells in Kentucky. But it was pretty cool. You know, I got to talk to the guy about, I couldn't figure out how the pump actually worked in the inside of the casing. You know, how the oil got above the pump to draw it up without the pump actually pressurizing it and pushing it back into the ground. So yeah, they made or serviced or installed pump jacks for oil wells. But so it was kind of a cool place. Okay, I'm going to show you a video on this, or a clip on this Ford that was sitting in here, and I mentioned it in my last shop update. Got a couple of people commented on it. One guy says, take it to there's a guy that's got a YouTube channel in a little town down in the southern tier of New York State, and he's got a lot of followers, and that was pretty funny because I've watched his videos a couple of times, and it was funny that that guy mentioned it. But anyways, Ford Expedition. It's a 2007, and you know, sometimes you go on the internet and you look, but you don't really see. We were trying to figure out what the issue with this engine was. It wouldn't start. First of all, there was a starter issue, so we ended up having to replace the starter on it. But we couldn't get it to start. And I'm going to add this clip in here to the shop update, but I've got to tell you, I am going to make a video on this car and post it on YouTube so that people know. Anyways, we replaced the starter in it. We got it to crank over. Couldn't get it to start. I put a pressure gauge on the, it's got a fuel rail, it's got fuel injection on it. I put a pressure gauge on the fuel rail, it was getting fuel. So we logically thought, okay, it's an issue with the ignition system. It's got spark packs on it, or plug packs on it. So what we did is, over there, and let's assume it's number 1 cylinder, we pulled the plug out of it, and actually the plug came out, and we hooked it up to the coil pack. That's what they're called, is coil packs. We hooked it up to the coil pack, put it on the ground, turned the car over, and there was spark. So we were kind of dumbfounded about it. Then we started really searching the internet about this engine, and started finding horror stories. It is called a Triton engine, and some of you guys might know right now what the issue is. There is an issue with spark plugs. The plugs that they put in these engines, and still put in these engines, are 2-piece plugs. And they break. They come apart. And they are a total bitch to get out. My grandson went out and got this kit to be able to pull broken spark plugs out, and that's what we have. We have broken spark plugs. We have been able to get 7 of the spark plugs out. Out of the 7 plugs, 1 of them was not broken. That was the original one that we pulled out to begin with. Wasn't broken. We have 1 plug, and let's call it number 8, and it's over on the right-hand side or passenger side in the rear. It's a bitch to get to, but apparently somebody's been into this engine before and has stripped that plug. But so we're kind of looking for a removal tool to get it now, like an extractor. Now I have a bunch of extractors, but they're male type extractors. We're looking for a female type extractor, and I'm sure we were in here working on it on the weekend. I'm sure that I could get one from my tool guy if I really needed one. But we started looking. We found one. Grainger has one. We started looking online first. Grainger has one. We actually put in Triton engine spark plug extractor, and Grainger was one of the hits that came up on this thing. But Grainger was closed on the weekend, so we couldn't go get it. One of the things that we did is we started going to automotive supply shops. And we went to Napa first, Advanced, AutoZone, stuff like that. We couldn't find it. We were kind of driving around, going to places too, and looking for hardware stores and stuff like that locally. I suggested to my grandson, why don't you call Pep Boys and see if they have one. And he actually called Pep Boys, but got their service department, not their parts store. And the guy didn't know what we were looking for. We were looking for the tool. He thought we were looking to bring the car in to have them replace the spark plugs. And he says, what is it? And we told him it was a Ford Expedition, and it was a 2007. And he says, oh, it's got the Triton motor in it. And we says, yes, but we're looking for the tool. And he says, well, if you bring it in, it's going to cost you $2,000. That's the starting cost of it, $2,000 to replace the plugs on it. And we were floored. We were absolutely floored. Can you imagine some unknowing person buying one of these cars and having to take it in for a tune-up and finding out that it was going to cost them $2,000, maybe more, to replace the spark plugs in this car? I mean, it's bizarre. And one of the things that we found out when we were at Napa is they still make these spark plugs. These two-piece spark plugs that have all of these issues about getting them back out of the engine. There's 2 issues with getting them out of the engine. How the engine is placed in here and getting to the spark plugs to begin with, but then the braking issue is the second thing in having to buy this extraction kit. He says, you can buy one-piece plugs, but that's not the replacement, the common replacement plug. The common replacement plug is still that 2-piece plug. He says unless you know that you need to go to a one-piece plug, anybody that's going to give you to the original 2-piece plugs is a common replacement for this thing. So that's kind of where we are. We're going to pull the plugs out, put new plugs in, and I don't know what he's going to do with this engine or with this car. There's a possibility he might keep it for his wife, but I'm not really sure if he'd be able to get rid of it with people knowing this. And Jesus, I hate to sell it to some unsuspecting person that, without telling them, you know what I mean? Shit, man, it would be, my conscience would be killing me for the rest of my life, or I'm assuming his would too. But anyways, just a little trivia about this Ford Expedition that's in my shop. Okay, I had the camera out to do a shop update video on something else, and UPS shows up, and so I'll do it on this first. This should be the brake assemblies for my trailer, and I'm kind of surprised that they came in such a small box. So you're going to see it, if the order is wrong, you're going to see it at the same time that I see it. But this box doesn't look big enough to have 4 brake assemblies in, but maybe I'm wrong. Kind of hard to do with holding the camera and trying to do this at the same time. Yeah, they do. They are. See, that's one of the things that I always wondered about on the wiring. There's 2 wires that go to it, and see, they're both black. So apparently it doesn't matter which wire you connect to which lead. Gotta tell you, not a lot of pad on them brakes. Okay, there's got to be 4 assemblies in there. Actually, I don't know how to, I'll have to get into it and identify them, because one is supposed to be for left and one is supposed to be for right, and I don't know how to identify them. Made in USA though. I'll bring you back. Okay, got the trailer in the shop. What we're doing is changing the brakes. The front brake axle was disconnected to begin with because we couldn't get it connected, so I was just driving with a rear axle on. So we're changing the front brakes. One of the things that I didn't know is if there was a negative and a positive, but the 2 wires on the new brakes are just black, so it probably doesn't matter how they are wired up. But working on the front set of brakes, once we get them on, wired up, I'll plug the truck in and just test them to make sure that they're working good. But here we look at this. Here we look at that coil too.
This is all blown apart.
Electric coil there. Yeah. I'll bring you back. Here I am over by where I have those other 2 set of brakes. I only put on the front brakes. The rear brakes on the trailer, the existing rear brakes on the trailer had been working. The front brakes hadn't. So there's a couple of things to tell you about. First of all, the identification, it is labeled left hand and right hand on that label there, so it was identified all along. I just didn't really look hard enough. Once you took the brakes off, it became evident of how they went on to begin with. This pivot arm, what this is, electric magnet, and what it does is it grips when you put the brakes on. It grips on the inside of that hub, and as it does that, it pulls this arm forward. I can't do it now because I'm holding the camera and it's on a swivel chair. Maybe if I do it this way, I can. But what it does is it pulls that arm forward like that, expands the brakes out. So what happened was we put those two set of front brakes on, and we never got them to work. But apparently that is fairly common, because what you need to do is actually get the wheels down on the ground and drive it a little bit to kind of get this thing engaged to grab onto that hub. So what I did is got it down, and I took it out for a while and got it to work, but we weren't going to bring it back into the shop and put the other ones on because it was getting late in the day and I had to go on a trip. So I've got the other two sets in here. These are for the backs. The existing backs were working to begin with, but I want to replace them because they're probably worn down. Now, again, what I'll do is when I go to replace the backs, I'll show you in detail how they go on, but it's fairly evident, logical, everything. They tell you the whole thing is an assembly because of the way the thing is put together and how that magnetic thing works. So what you do is you just pull this whole assembly off of the axle and put the new assembly back on, rebolt it, and just put the hub and everything back on again. But this video is getting kind of long, so what I'm going to do is I will bring you back and show you that trip down to New Jersey and some other things that are going on in the shop on the next shop update. Probably the brake will be onto the trailer too, so I will show you that in the next shop update. But anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe.